The guards never even cried out. Azariah crawled through crusted snow, knife in hand, heart pounding under layers of buffalo hide. He was 15. If he failed, they'd all die, and Sweetgrass would never be his. In the dark behind him, warriors waited. Ahead, 100 crow horses stood tethered, just one sharp breath away from panic. In the final weeks of the 18th of February 21, the wind along the Yellowstone River moved like a knife. The Rocky Mountains stood frozen, blanketed under snow and silence, the kind of silence that could fool a man into thinking the world was asleep. But Azariah Hancock knew better. Somewhere in those valleys, the Crow herded their prize animals, thick-necked stallions, sharp-eyed mares, and they watched for enemies, even now. Still, there were patterns. Winter slowed everything. Raids didn't happen in February. That was custom. That was what Azariah meant to break. He'd come west as a fugitive, barefoot and hunted. By 15, they called him He Who Walks Tall, not as praise but as challenge. You walk tall, you'd better stand when it counts. Sweetgrass, daughter of 2 hawks, watched him with cautious eyes. Her people would never accept a husband who hadn't proved his worth. Not with gifts, but with daring. So he planned a raid. Not a spring raid, not a raid on a trader's camp or a lone traveler. He wanted a crow horse herd, and not just a few animals snatched from the edges. He meant to take the whole thing. The Crow weren't just any tribe. They were known for their horses. Kicked in the bellies, their band, bred them in high mountain valleys, and guarded them with layers of silence and steel. To touch those herds without being cut down was nearly unheard of. Azariah didn't care. He had a plan, and he had men. Liam O'Reilly was the first to join him. A trapper from County Cork, Liam had long abandoned Ireland, and any law that came with it. Now he lived married into the Northern Cheyenne, wore his hair long, and fought with the fury of someone who'd buried too many friends. Nightwing followed older, slower, sharper, an Arapaho warrior with years of scars under his robe. He moved with quiet thought, every decision weighed like stone in water. His daughter, Laughing Bird, still remembered the night her father returned with a shattered arm after fighting the Crow. Since then, Nightwing never gave them a second chance. Howling Wolf, Sweetgrass's younger brother, came next. He had something to prove, maybe too much. Hot-blooded and fast-handed, he wanted to be the first into the fight and the last to leave. Then came Beaver and Ottertail. They were younger than Liam, older than Azariah, and quicker than both. Skilled in the bow, deadly with clubs, they had spent months teaching Azariah how to move without a sound and strike without hesitation. Now he would need every lesson they ever gave. The idea to strike in winter hit Azariah as he stood watching smoke from a hide tent drift sideways in the wind. That wind whispered something old now, while they sleep. He turned to Liam that night. They won't expect us. Not in February. Liam's response was a long silence, then a nod. They won't. But if they hear us, we die. Azariah laid it out to the others 2 nights later. The cold would mask their movement. The Crow, like everyone else, would be conserving strength. Fires would be low. Guards would be tired. We don't ride in loud. We crawl in silent, he said. We use blades. Clubs. Not a gun, unless we have no choice. Nightwing rubbed his jaw and looked at Azariah for a long while. And if the horses spook before we reach them? Then we fail, Azariah answered. But if we wait until spring, we'll never get that close again. Beaver narrowed his eyes. How many horses? As many as we can drive. More than 10, Azariah said. Enough to name a price, enough to earn a wife. That was what turned Howling Wolf. "You raid for sweetgrass?" he asked. Azariah met his gaze. "I do." Howling Wolf grinned. "Then let's bring her 100. They began collecting gear. Each man took only what could be carried on foot knives, tomahawks, bows, arrows. Liam and Azariah brought rifles, but packed them low in hides, not to be touched unless it came to blood. For food, they made pemmican, dried meat pounded with fat and berries, sealed in hide pouches. They stripped jerky from old mule deer. No flour, no fire kits. They wouldn't light a flame again until the raid was done. As they prepared, Nightwing pulled Azariah aside. "You lead this," the elder said, "but don't let your pride kill you. The Crow aren't fools. They've killed men smarter than us." Azariah nodded. "I don't want blood, just the horses." Nightwing's eyes narrowed. "Then make sure we all come back." By the next morning, they were gone. They moved northeast, the Rockies looming like jagged teeth on the horizon. The snow came deep in drifts, thinner in the valleys. The days passed, grey and silent. Each man walked behind the other in single file, footprints pressed deep into the snow, then brushed over with pine boughs. No one spoke above a whisper. They took breaks under rock outcroppings or inside frozen gullies where the wind died. Each stop, they checked weapons, bowstrings tight, blades clean. Liam walked point in the afternoons, eyes sharp. At night, Nightwing kept watch with his bow across his lap. 4 days in, food ran low. Tracks showed mule deer had passed near a creek bed. Azariah and Beaver followed the trail, while the others doubled back to leave false prints. By mid-morning, the two spotted a yearling. It stood by a frozen willow, ears twitching. Azariah crouched low, breath steady. He drew back the arrow, aimed just behind the shoulder, and let fly. The arrow hit with a low thud. The deer staggered, collapsed. They dressed it quickly, wrapped the meat in hide, and buried the offal under snow. Back at camp, they dried the best cuts over hot stones and mixed the rest with tallow for more pemmican. They left no bones. By day 6, they began to smell smoke on the air, not pine, but dung smoke, distant, human. They were close. Howling Wolf and Ottertail volunteered to scout. They stripped down to soft moccasins, painted their faces in ash, and disappeared into the pines before first light. "Don't be heroes," Nightwing told them. They returned late, just before sundown. Ottertail spoke first. "Found them. 10 miles northeast. Big village. At least 4 circles. Maybe more." Howling Wolf added, "They have horses. Lots of them. Most are tied outside the outer edge. We saw 2 guards. One old, one sleeping." Azariah asked, "How far from the ridgeline?" 2 miles, Ottertail said. "No dogs that we saw." Azariah looked at the sky. No moon yet. Good. Darkness was their ally. They waited one more night. There were no fires, just cold hands, sharpened blades, and the hush of breath held too long. Liam spoke low as they checked gear. "No talking from here on. We stay in pairs. Azariah and Howling Wolf take the ropes. Ottertail and Beaver handle the guards. Nightwing and I watch the perimeter. If anything moves, we kill it." Azariah stood, snow clinging to his leggings. "No heroics. We move in clean, we move out fast." 6 nods, 6 warriors, 1 purpose. As the sky turned black and the wind shifted west, they moved. They reached the final staging point, 3 hours after sunset. The air had turned brittle, the kind of cold that cracked underfoot and burned in the throat. No one spoke. They were 2 miles from the Crow village now. One wrong move, and the snow would carry the sound straight into enemy ears. Azariah signaled a halt with 2 fingers. Liam and Nightwing scanned the ridgeline, while Beaver and Ottertail checked wind direction. Even Howling Wolf, always the loudest, said nothing. They dropped low in a patch of brush between 2 narrow rock shelves. Horses couldn't be heard yet, but Azariah knew they were out there. Somewhere beyond the trees, 100 tethered animals waited under crow guard. The plan was simple. Cut the ropes, scatter the herd, get out before anyone could organize a defense. But first, they needed to prepare. Each man checked his weapons. Bowstrings were tested and drawn, arrows selected and set aside. Knives were unsheathed, laid across thighs. Liam oiled the lock on his rifle but said aloud, "God help us if we need to fire this thing." Nightwing knelt beside him, watching the dark beyond the trees. "We will not be the only ones awake tonight," he said. "If there's even one dog, one cough, then we vanish." Azariah finished. He rose and stepped away from the group, moving up a slope to a narrow shelf of flat stone. It overlooked the trees, the stars hanging wide above. He crouched, set his knife in the snow beside him, and bowed his head. "Lord," he whispered, "it's been a while since we talked." He paused. The cold scraped at his lungs. Far below, the village stayed quiet. "First, I want to thank you for bringing me this far, for giving me these friends, for keeping us alive. If Sweetgrass is the one, if she's meant to be my wife, show me." His voice faltered. "Just a sign, that's all I'm asking." A moment passed. Then, from the western ridge, a wolf howled. The sound rolled low and slow through the trees, not frantic, not near just steady and distant, like an answer. Azariah smiled. "I assumed that's your answer," he said. "Thank you. Amen." He stood, picked up his knife, and walked back to the others without another word. By the time he rejoined the group, the mood had shifted. There was no more talk of risk, just readiness. Liam nodded. "We go now," quiet as death. And they moved. The raid began at midnight. The sky was cloudless. Stars flickered above like eyes watching. Azariah and Howling Wolf led, crawling through bramble and packed snow, their moccasins wrapped in hide to muffle sound. The terrain sloped downward, revealing a broad clearing. In its center, the crow horses stood black shapes against white earth, their breath rising in slow puffs. The pair moved like ghosts. Azariah gripped his knife in one hand, rope in the other. He crawled on elbows and knees, stopping only to scan the perimeter. Howling Wolf moved parallel, 10 feet away, eyes locked on the closest tether. They reached the herd without alerting the horses. Azariah touched the nearest flank, then slid his knife against the lead rope. One clean pull. No noise. Behind them, Beaver and Ottertail circled from the opposite side. They spotted 2 guards by a small fire pit, both half asleep, seated with backs against a fallen log. One was nodding, the other chewing something. Beaver tapped Ottertail's shoulder. 2 fingers, 2 targets. Go. They moved fast. Beaver struck the first man in the side of the head with a weighted club. The man's skull cracked, jaw snapping sideways. Ottertail silenced the second before he could cry out, his blade cutting deep and fast. Blood hit the snow in 2 clean arcs. No time for ceremony, but they scalped the bodies. Custom mattered. Azariah saw them finish and gave a signal open palm, then 3 fingers raised. Go. Howling Wolf vaulted onto the nearest horse. Azariah followed, whispering to the animal before swinging bareback onto its back. They shouted. A single piercing whoop broke the night. Then another, then a dozen. The horses bolted. A thunder of hooves tore through the clearing. Snow exploded beneath them. Horses screamed. Trees shook. The entire herd stampeded southeast, away from the village. Chaos gripped the Crow camp. Shadows stirred. Tents flapped. Cries of alarm echoed behind them. But it was already too late. Liam and Nightwing had taken positions above the trail. As 4 Crow warriors gave chase, bows and rifles answered. Nightwing dropped one with a gut shot from 30 yards. Liam steadied his rifle on a branch and fired once clean through a man's chest. The other 2 fell before they could draw. The rest of the village didn't pursue. By the time they realized what was happening, the herd was a mile away, and the night had swallowed the raiders whole. When they regrouped at dawn, they counted 110 horses. No one spoke for a while, just breath and hooves and the hum of victory humming under their skin. The journey back was not easy. Snow deepened as they climbed into higher ground. Horses scattered more than once, and cold cracked leather straps. On the second day, they lost 20 animals, a mix of mares and yearlings to a steep ravine and a patch of frozen water that gave out under their hooves. Still, they pressed on. Liam took the lead in rough terrain. Nightwing tracked behind, counting strays. Beaver and Ottertail kept the horses together with whistles and twine. Azariah and Howling Wolf rode beside the front flank, eyes sharp for any sign of Crow pursuit. There was none. They zigzagged through valleys, avoiding open plains. They crossed half-frozen rivers with ropes tied between riders, guiding the herd one at a time. When they saw the first smoke trails from their village a week later, the men stood in their saddles. White Antelope's camp came into view just past midday. Drums started first, low and slow. Then women emerged, wrapped in robes, shouting. Children ran. Dogs barked. They had returned. Beaver raised a crow scalp high. Ottertail did the same. Azariah and Howling Wolf rode side by side, eyes forward, shoulders squared. The horses followed like thunder behind them. The village roared. At the center circle, Two Hawks stood with his arms crossed. White Antelope beside him. Elders gathered around them as the raiders dismounted. Azariah walked forward, reins in hand. 10 of these are for you, he said to Two Hawks. 3 more you already have, that's 13. Two Hawks studied him. Then the horses. Then Sweetgrass, who stood silent behind her mother. He nodded once. Azariah continued. The rest go to Liam, Nightwing, Howling Wolf, Beaver, and Ottertail. I keep none. Murmurs passed through the crowd. Even White Antelope tilted his head. Wonder Bear, another elder, stepped forward. And why do you give so freely, boy? Azariah looked up. A wise man told me once that a man's true heart is judged by how he looks after his family. Who was this wise man? Wonder Bear asked. Azariah smiled. My father. The elders nodded. Then Sweetgrass stepped forward. Azariah dropped the reins, ran to her, and lifted her off the ground. They kissed. The village cheered. Even the dogs howled. Clay Basket, her mother, tried to scold them. But Two Hawks only folded his arms and said, Let them be. That night, fires burned hot. Meat was passed hand to hand. The story of the raid was told a dozen times, each retelling louder than the last. Children clambered on the horses. Warriors clapped Azariah on the back until his ribs ached. They had taken 110 horses, returned with 90, killed 6 Crow warriors, lost none of their own. Azariah had crossed a line that no outsider ever had, and Sweetgrass, waiting under the moonlight, now waited no more. By early the 18th of March 21, the snow had not yet melted from the ridge trails, but something in the air had shifted. Azariah Hancock was no longer just a boy from Maryland hiding behind a new name. The raid had changed him, not just in the eyes of the Arapaho, but in the way he stood, the way he spoke, the way others looked at him when he passed. 2 hawks, a man slow to trust and slower to speak praise, now eyed him differently. He inspected the stolen herd personally. The numbers impressed him. The condition of the animals, strong, uninjured, well handled, impressed him more. "These are no traders' ponies," he said aloud. "These are Crow bloodlines." Azariah didn't smile. He only nodded and replied, "They were tied to their hearts. We took them anyway." That alone said enough. But it wasn't just the horses. It was how Azariah gave them away. 13 for the bride price, more than asked. The rest distributed without hesitation to those who had risked their lives beside him. Liam received 4. Nightwing took 3. Beaver, Ottertail, and Howling Wolf split the others. Azariah kept none. In Arapaho tradition, generosity was not weakness. It was proof of strength. The man who gave the most had the most to offer. Azariah's decision cemented not just respect, but trust. Wonderbear, one of the elders, said it plainly. "He came to us a stranger. Now he stands among us with no shadow behind him." Even Nightwing, the war-scarred elder who had once doubted the boy's readiness, now spoke openly in his defense. "He who walks tall is a good man," Nightwing told the council. "He has the maturity of men much older than himself. He took nothing for himself. That tells me all I need." But beneath the celebration, tension simmered. 6 Crow men had died. 2 scalped in their sleep, 4 cut down during the chase. And though no retaliation came immediately, the risk was real. The Crow would not forget what had been taken, nor how it had been done. The Arapaho responded by doubling their patrols. Younger warriors kept closer to camp. Elders warned their children not to wander past the river bend. Dogs were trained to bark at the scent of unfamiliar leather. Still, fear didn't rule the village. The raid had also sent a message. The Arapaho could strike deep, even in winter, even without warning. For Azariah, the deeper change was quieter. He spent more time beside 2 hawks, listening, learning, not as a suitor now, but as a son-in-law. He helped butcher game, sat in council circles, learned the history of the people he'd chosen to call his own. Sweetgrass walked beside him more freely. When spring came, they were married in a quiet ceremony beside the river. A year later, their son was born. He named him Gideon after his father. There were no speeches, no drums, just a quiet fire, and a few words passed between Liam and Azariah as the child slept wrapped in hides. "You got what you came for," Liam said. Azariah nodded, and more. Liam sipped his drink, squinted at the flames. "You ever think what would have happened if we'd failed that night?" Azariah didn't answer for a long while. Then he looked up. "Every night." That was the truth of it. The raid didn't just win him a wife or a place among warriors. It shaped him, forced him to lead, to trust, to kill, to give. He never boasted about it. He never told the story first. But when the younger boys asked how to prove themselves, the elders would point to the herd and say, "Ask the one who walked tall into the crow's shadow and came back with thunder behind him." Azariah didn't walk taller after that night. He just walked with more men behind him. When the herd thundered out of crow territory that winter night, it wasn't just horses that crossed that valley, it was Azariah himself. He went in a boy with a blade and a reason. He came out a man others followed. He didn't lead with ego. He led by crawling through ice, by cutting ropes in the dark, by sharing what he stole to lift up those who stood beside him. The Crow never forgot, neither did the Arapaho. And neither should we. If you want more stories like this, raw, real, and built from the bones of history, stay with us. This is just one trail among many.